Hello, this is Todd Flowers with Konica Minolta. We're continuing with the Success Triad series. Today's topic will be understanding paper. Today, starting off with it, before we get into the first slide, I just want to do a quick overview of what the purpose of the webinar is today. This is just to simply explain paper and paper types and how you can understand what types of paper will run properly through your copiers, what types of paper may not, and how to understand paper and read the languages of the weights and the grams per square meters and things of that nature. And that's what we're going to cover today. So starting out, different paper types. There are many other paper types than what we have just on this slide. Bond is the most common, as it says here on the slide. You use a lot of that, like 20-pound bond for your black and white. Cover stock, you run some of that through maybe your either your black and white or your color copier. They can be coated and uncoated. They have different finishes. Index paper is a different type. It's made differently, so sometimes it's a little bit cheaper if you're running large volume, but you want to make sure that this particular index paper is, again, on the media guide for whatever type of copy you have in your shop, so it can be used properly. So moving on to the next slide. This is a paper guide chart that's completely confusing, has a lot of numbers on it, and it's hard to make sense of it. So today I'm going to try to help make sense a little bit of all these numbers and what they mean, because when you boil it down, it's very simple. You have your bond paper types, offset, cover, tag, index, and it talks about points, calipers, millimeters, metric, grams per square meter, and then all these equivalency weights. So yes, it's very confusing, but this is how you understand it and make it easy on yourself. A 16-pound bond is equivalent to a 37-pound tag to a 33-pound index, okay, and has a point size of 3.2, and if you go over to the right, it has a grams per square meter of 6.2, or 60.2, excuse me. The only thing that really matters when you're dealing with paper is to understand that when it says on the front of the packet of the paper, it says 32-pound bond. Then you flip it over to the side and you see the grams per square meter on there. That's what matters when you're running paper through copiers, is the grams per square meter, and if it's on the media guide and can be handled through the copier at the end of the day. So if we move to the next slide, what we have here is the side of the ream of color copy gloss paper that is 32 pound in weight. Now the little tiny number underneath it is 120 grams per square meter. That is really what you need to be looking at as far as the real weight of the paper, because again, referring back to the slide before, we know that 32-pound gloss paper could mean that it's different in different weights. That's what the point of that other chart was. So in the Konica Minolta units, you can actually go in per tray and you select what grams per square meter of paper you're putting into that tray, so the copier can make adjustments and make sure it runs that paper properly. Okay, so it's very important to understand to look for the little tiny number underneath on the side of the ream of the paper, grams per square meter, to know if you need to put it on thick 1, thick 2, thick 3, thick 4 on our copier so that it comes out with the best product and runs properly. On the next slide, we have our media guide. Now, you should have access to our media guides. You actually have access to the media guides on this particular site. Download the media guide or ask your local Konica Minolta rep to give it to you. But the way it's explained, if we look down here, let's get into some cover stock here at the bottom. You have a Dumtar brand. Okay, it's cover stock. Okay, it's 80-pound cover and 216 grams per square meter. It'll go through any tray in the bypass tray, and you run it on thick 3. So that is, so if you tried to run this 80-pound cover on a normal setting on your copier instead of thick 3, if it was a color unit, it's going to come out very bland. The color's going to come out very weak. It may jam because it's not set properly and you think your copier is not running right. So again, this is how you work within the media guide and understanding paper. So next we're going to go a little bit over just some general rules about paper themselves. These different types of paper can cause damages or misfeeds in an MFP or copier. The overhead transparencies, paper that is heat transfer or inkjet paper, because that paper has different chemical makeup when they manufacture that product than what is acceptable for copiers. Paper that's extremely thick or thin, that means out of the spec for the media guides. Of course, damp paper. And if you look through here, there's some other examples. I'm not going to go through all these. Basically, you can't put full or embossed paper in there. Non-standard shape paper. You can't put a round piece of paper through a copier. It won't go through. It has to be standard shapes. So moving forward, just make sure you take care of your paper. Store it in a cool, dark location. You have the cabinets there in your store. If humidity is a problem, then the paper should be wrapped. Just don't allow too many extreme temperatures or water to get to your paper. And also, it's very helpful to, the last point is to store the paper in a laying flat so that it doesn't get a curl to it before you put it in the paper trays in your copiers. That can sometimes cause some jams. Next slide. So who cares? It's just paper. Well, it's worth talking about for another moment. It is your product. You do sell it. What you put out there and understanding paper, this may help you understand maybe some things that you were doing or misstepping with before. Look at your media guide, whether it's a Konica Minolta unit or one of the other approved vendors' units. It's there as a guideline, and you should actually look at the media guide before you purchase the unit to understand what the unit's capable of before you bring it into your store. Use the right settings on your copier. I would recommend to never run any paper that your customer brings into your store, because it could be photographic paper. You have no idea what it is. It could cause some service calls on your copier. You just don't know. It's always good to purchase paper from national or regional paper suppliers like Expedex or Mac Papers. They have a wide selection of paper. They have a staff that understands paper, and it's better than buying it from the competition like Office Max and they generally have better prices. And of course, keep your paper in good shape. So if you had any more questions about anything else with paper, please contact your local Konica Minolta rep. I want to thank you for taking the time to take this very short webinar on paper.